I welcome everybody to the meeting of the Executive Committee of the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission. If you will all join me in the signing of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I thank everyone. You may be seated. I'm going to ask the Executive Committee to allow the Chair's forbearance under unanimous consent. We would like to take up a matter out of order in the agenda. If there's no objection, we will proceed to item 7. Hearing no objection, let the record reflect that that is done by unanimous consent. The Chair recognizes Kevin Breesky to present the report.
We'll begin with the Technical Planning Committee met on May 9th. The public comment period or report for the air quality conformity, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Companion Update Amendment Number 4 in the fiscal year 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program is available in your packets. Steven Cisterek will explain the report.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So on page 29 to 53 of your agenda packet is the public comment report. As was previously reported in this meeting and others, the public comment period ran from March 14th to April 21st. We had six meeting sessions in 5 different locations throughout the region. In the comment report, there were no significant comments being ones that required changes, like substantive changes to the document where we have to go back out for public comment. I will note the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration requested the addition of some text regarding the implementation of performance-based planning to the TIP document, and that text was added, so you'll see that also reflected at the end of the comment report there. Other than that, thank you to everyone who helped, who came to the meetings, participated. It's always nice to get out to the different committees, and that's it. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Seeing none, let's go on to the 4 very important actions we have to consider today. The first involves Resolution 1711, the Air Quality Conformity for the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan Companion Update Amendment Number 4, fiscal year 2018-2021 Transportation Improvement Program. Scott Weber will explain this action.
Thank you all. Good morning.
Good morning.
The Resolution 1711 that's requested for action this morning refers to the air quality conformity demonstration. We have to demonstrate air quality conformity for both our fiscal year 2018 to 21 Transportation Improvement Program and Amendment Number 4 to our 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan Update Companion, because we are in a non-attainment area for ozone for Lake and Porter counties, and because they are regionally significant projects. So our interagency consultation group on air quality, which is comprised of NERC, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, US EPA, INDOT, and the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, have been consulting on this since January. And the document that you have in front of you has been under public comment from March 21st to April 21st. So part of that comment period was Steve just mentioned. If you want to look at the results, it would be on page 70. However, it's a little bit hard to find, so I'll need to pull it up. It's at the bottom. Show that we are under budgets for all years 2020 out to 2045 for the precursors of ozone, except for in the year 2020, where we are actually, you can see for volatile organic compounds, VOC 6.01 is greater than 5.99. To remedy this is probably because we had to move the Ileana Expressway corridor out from 2020 to 2040, and so doing so actually caused us to go slightly above. But we've consulted with a leading expert in the field who's actually taught a course on air quality conformity, Sarah Suick, and the recommendation is that we claim offset emissions credits for projects that are already undergoing our TIP, which include the Air Quality Public Education Outreach Project. And we were able to show calculations, which you can find, that show that this project would result in a reduction of about 0.04 tons per summer day, which is 6.01 minus 0.04 is still under 5.99. So that would include a rideshare program and a gas can exchange program. So this offset would allow us to demonstrate air quality conformity, and that was agreed to by the interagency consultation group, and recommended for approval last week by the Technical Planning Committee. So our action that we recommend is approving air quality conformity for these two major items. Any questions?
The TPC recommends adoption of Resolution 1711.
So moved. Second. There's been a motion, a second. For the record, the motion was made by Commissioner Benson, and the second was made by Commissioner Tan. As many as, do you want to speak in favor of the motion? Hearing no one wants to, does anybody wants to speak against? Nobody wishes to. As many as in favor say yes or aye.
Aye.
As many as opposed say no. The yeses have it, the motion is adopted, the resolution is passed. Next.
Thank you. The next action for consideration is Resolution 1712, the Environmental Justice Analysis for the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan Companion Update, Amendment 4, fiscal year 2016-2019 Transportation Program. Scott Weber will explain this action.
Thank you again. So Resolution 1712 is a recommendation for approving resolution of the environmental justice analysis for, again, the two major items, the 2018 to 2021 Transportation Improvement Program and amendment number 4 to our Comprehensive Regional Plan Update Companion. So we take a two-pronged approach to demonstrate environmental justice, and the idea here is that we want to show that we're not causing undue burden on both low-income and minority populations. And so our first prong of the approach is to show that the physical impacts of all these significant projects would not unduly burden the environmental justice community. Now, two of those major projects, the Ileana Corridor and the I-65 Added Travel Lanes project, we actually already showed an approval of environmental justice back in, for the Ileana, it was November 2013, for the I-65 Added Travel Lanes was in May 2015, or 2016. So we decided that these projects didn't unduly impact the environmental justice community, so we didn't need to look at that, and those analysis that were already passed showed that. Now, for the other two projects, the NICT Westlake Corridor and the NICT Double Tracking projects, we realized that NICT is already undergoing a more extensive environmental justice analysis, and that is well documented. There's a link to those analyses on the page, it would be on page 80, top of page 83. So if you're curious, the link there, that's a much more extensive environmental justice analysis that we would be able to undergo. Also, as far as how these projects might impact low-income minority areas, NICT is, as a recipient of Federal Transit Administration dollars, has to adhere to the Uniform Relocation Assistance Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970, because they're recipients of FTA funding. So they are handing out pamphlets and going door to door in all these communities. And it's also important to note that we looked at the map, and I'll pull that up for you right here. I apologize for being sideways. But if we look at, flip the Michigan City area cursor. So the major areas where there would be a property relocation assistance would be in Michigan City, and that's been well documented in the double tracking project, but also in the Munster area. And just looking at those two, there isn't necessarily an undue burden on environmental justice communities, because Michigan City is an area where there are environmental justice populations, but Munster is in an area where there's not. So just looking at on balance, at least in our process, we don't see any undue burden for these two projects. Now, that's the first prong of the approach. The second prong is looking at travel time benefits or burdens for these projects, and we actually looked at 11 performance measures. And so what we found is neither quantifiable from our travel modeling. We show that in no cases are there any negative impacts. There are some minimal to no impacts, but on all these, but for example, you can see that the projects as a result of these projects would result in benefits of making 6,000 additional jobs available within 20 minutes of low-income areas, and roughly 15,000 more other destinations, which include healthcare facilities, and 4,000 more shopping destinations within 20 minutes, which includes grocery shopping. So you can see that there is some kind of positive benefit, but there's no negative benefit for all these 11 performance measures. And so the Technical Planning Committee recommended that we pass the environmental justice analysis last week at May 9th. So if there's any questions, we can answer them.
You can find additional information on NICT Westlake Corridor. The TPC recommends adoption of 1712.
It's been recommended. Is there a motion in favor? It's been moved by Commissioner
Simpson.
Thank you. And seconded by Commissioner Benson. Do you wish to speak in favor of your motion?
No.
Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the motion? Hearing no action that way, as many as in favor say aye. Aye. As many as opposed to adoption say no. The ayes have it, the motion is adopted, the resolution is passed. Next.
The next action for consideration is Resolution 1713, Amendment 4 to the 2040 Comprehensive Regional Plan Companion Update. Mr. Aloga will explain this amendment.
Good morning. Okay, you've heard the public comment report, approved the air quality conformity, just approved the environmental justice analysis. Now we have arrived at the amendment to the comprehensive regional plan update companion amendment number 4. Up on the screen, you'll actually see the details of what that amendment entails. Number 1, double tracking and the related improvements in the Nittany line, Gary, Michigan City, the 25-mile project, 16.4 miles of new track. Second project of addition, Westlake extension of the Nittany line from Hamlin to Dyer. Both of these are to have an open traffic date before January 1st, 2025. There's also some adjustments, including the Iliad Expressway. The completion date has moved back from 2020 to 2040, in line with the Chicago Metropolitan Area for Planning and their similar action pushed to 2040. And the final adjustment to this amendment are the added travel lanes from US 30 to State Route 10, now being reduced to State Route 2 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. That completes this round of improvements and amendments to the comprehensive regional plan update campaign.
The target for I-65 will be January 1st, 2020. So there's a lot of projects
Yes.
that the state has on its plate right now.
Yes.
The recommendation of TPC is for adoption of Resolution 1713.
It's been recommended for the TPC for adoption. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Commissioner Tom and seconded by Commissioner Benson to approve Resolution 17-13. The mover wish to speak in favor of this motion?
Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the motion? Hearing none, as many as in favor of the motion vote aye.
Aye.
As many as opposed say no. The ayes have it, the motion passes, the resolution is adopted. Is there any further business of this matter? The chair then will bring us back to regular order. Business in order. I'll take your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Kind of a big one.
The final action.
That's easy for you to say.
Is Resolution 1714 fiscal year 2018-2012 transportation improvement program. Once again, Mitchell Bartologo will explain this action.
Thank you, sir. And I am filling in for the venerable Gary Evers, who has to be ill today.
I'm sorry about that.
So are we. So am I. Especially right now. Resolution 1714 is the adoption of the new 2018 to 2021 Transportation Improvement Program, 4-year program that encompasses the great variety of transportation projects that are happening in Northwest Indiana through a variety of agencies that are affected with this. Yeah, I've got a hot mic here. You okay? All right. Thank you. That has a variety of agencies that are included within this regarding a myriad of transportation options, NDOT, NICD, many communities, transit agencies and the like. So that plan itself, and there are many pages to the tip. I will not go through in gross detail, but safe to say it does involve projects that we have just mentioned, inclusion into the amendment of the comprehensive regional plan. I will focus your attention on the gross totals on the very back of your agenda packet. Actually, there's a page number to it, page 87. That page is actually before you up on the screen. It gives you a rundown of the significant amount of money that we are spending over the next 4 years and have programmed here in this transportation improvement program. The total is 1.5 or nearly $1.6 billion worth of projects. And you can see how it works out. NDOT has 340 listings. The local planning authority Highways have 131 listings. The National Service here has 2 listings, National Park Service has 2 listings, and Transit has 173 listings. And again, the gross total of all these projects comes out to almost $1.6 billion, a significant amount of money. And we have also approved the air quality conformity for ozone on this, just at this meeting today as well. So that's it. Back to the commission.
This is a historic day for this commission and for Northwest Indiana. Suffice it to say, the benefits of spending this amount of money far outweigh the expenditure itself. That's the thing we have to keep an eye on. And the TPC recommends adoption of Resolution 1714.
So, Commissioner Benson moves the adoption of Resolution 1714. Commissioner Stinson seconds it. Do the movers wish to speak in favor of their motion? Hearing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this motion? It is in order that the call for the vote, as many as in favor say aye. Aye. As many as opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion passes. The resolution is adopted. Congratulations.
Supporting the efforts of the staff and the technical planning committee. The next meeting will be Tuesday, June 13th. Everybody's invited at 9 a.m. in this room.
Well, I want to thank you and the chair. The chair and co-chairs are here, and I want to thank you both for your leadership on the committee, and I appreciate the work product of the committee. We now can resume regular order. I hope everybody's had a chance to review the minutes of April 20th of the executive board meeting. The chair will entertain a motion with regard to the disposition of those minutes.
So moved.
It's been moved to adopt the minutes. Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Commissioner Benson, seconded by Commissioner Stinson. Do the movers wish to speak in favor of their motion? I bet not. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition? I bet not. As many as in favor of the motion say yes. As many opposed say no. The yeses have it. The minutes are adopted. Now, the chair will tell you that the presumption under parliamentary law is that a quorum exists. If nobody challenges that, we can remain here and actually receive information under Indiana law. But the chair recognizes that some members who form the quorum have to leave, and so we will not take any objection if you depart at this time. Well, that's good, so we're in very good shape. The report which shares the next business in order, the only report that I have pending is sort of an unfinished matter with regard to a sensitive commission resolution. I will bring that back for consideration of the full commission after I've had a chance to talk to Mayor Copeland. The subject matter is with regard to the Pine Avenue Bridge, and we want to make sure that the language in that reflects our real needs and doesn't misrepresent our circumstances. And I just need to talk to him about that. Absent that, the chair has nothing else to report except Abigail got to school and probably will get into 3rd grade. So that's yes, that's what's something to go on. The chair recognizes the executive director for his report.
Thank you, and I will be brief. Thank you all again for accommodating the shift in time. That was a historic vote that you just made, which is very appropriate for National Infrastructure Week, which we are in. So having adopted the largest tip in NIRPC's history is what you just did. So congratulations on that. It shows a real commitment to try to keep the region moving. And also the historic event that just happened, signing House of Order Act 1144, which the governor rode in on a train to do in Michigan City, and thanks to those of you that were able to do that and then come to this meeting as well. Truly a historic day on multiple levels. I'm also happy to relay, I put this in an email yesterday, but for those of you that did not get this word, if you recall this whole MPO consolidation issue that would have required essentially a merger with Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning and the Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. We had a House bill and Senate bill that enjoyed great bipartisan support. Those bid to just abolish the rule. Both of those flew out of both the Senate and the House in record speed, and we're very thankful for that. President Trump signed that last Friday, so that is now officially a dead issue, so we will not be merging with CMAP, and all parties are very, very happy with that. CMAP is Indeed. I want to thank just NIRPC's also delegation that has been in D.C. and helped to spread this word about the importance of why we not want this to happen, so that we can do things like program our dollars, like the $1.6 billion tip you just adopted. So it's great. Just real quick, a reminder that there's 2 things we have federal review-wise coming up. In June is the triennial review, which has to do with our Federal Transit Administration funds, and then in July is our quadrennial review, which has to do with our certification as an MPO. There'll be more on that, announcements about public meetings and whatnot, so just stay tuned. But a lot is happening this summer. June 15th, if you want to put this on your calendar, but we'll send something out, but from 4 to 6 p.m., we finally arrived at a date now that Purdue has moved into the building. We're going to have an open house in this facility now that everything is remodeled and everything is ready. So 4 to 6 p.m. is the planned time on June 15th. That's a Thursday. We have our commission meeting that morning. You can stay there all day if you want to. But we'll have that from 4 to 6 that night. Also, heads up is this position coming. This is on the finance and personnel matters. You'll get information on this. But just heads up, that's in June as well. If you have anybody that wants to buy a slightly used bus from around the region. Flyers at your places, just to draw attention to two pieces of information from the Construction Advancement Foundation. We agreed to put NERC's logo on here since it also is open to local governments as well that could benefit from this information. Just to be clear, we're not actually spending money on any of these, we're just lending our help in getting the word out. But there's two free events coming out that you might want to pass on to your staff. One having to do with new construction manager at risk laws. I understand NDOT is not affected by this particular piece, but still, if you're involved in public construction that might be affected, you might want to get the latest on that, and then also on asphalt technology. So those are at your desk. And the last thing is also at your spot is, and I'm sure Mr. Powers will talk about this, but Community Crossings meeting is coming up. I will save that for him, but just know that you have the date there, May 31st, with two options at 10 o'clock and at 1 o'clock. Lastly, just a very quick note, I know some of you have tracked the legislation that had to do with road funding, and I just want to point out at the end of that, we talked about this here before, about the swap provisions, exchange provisions. What's happening at this point, and Rick can correct me if you have some more recent information, but NDOT is working on the guidance on how to implement that swap provision. So I don't have any information yet on details about that, but as we do, and as NDOT figures that out, we'll of course communicate how that's going to work on a practical basis. So
everybody's clear, the swap is, the theory is that the state has the organizational capacity to regularly do the reporting requirements that obtain receipt of the expenditure of federal. And the idea was to allow locals to get access to the same amount of money and in effect trade the federal shares that they'd be allocated regularly with a state amount, a state-based amount, which would have less of those rigors, but not all of them. So that's the concept. So even though today, for example, we programmed our most, may God bless you all day, programmed our most significant amount of tip money ever. That, what component of that would be federal, in fact, remains to be seen, but we still think the MPOs will be, have a role. It will be significant.
Are you asking?
No, that sort of sets you up for later, I guess.
I'll make a note, you want me to speak on this.
Thank you. I would love it. And
thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that. We've been told by those that were championing this piece of the legislation that there would be essentially no difference in procedure. We'll just have to work out the details and keep you apprised. I'm essentially done, but I just wanted to make a quick introduction since he's here with us. Many of you know we have hired an HR consultant that has helped us revamp our policies and work on some internal structure. Mike Russell is here today, so just to introduce you quickly so you have a name with the face if you see his name come up. Mike's been really helpful in being able to give us guidance, talking with staff. He's here roughly once a week and it's been very helpful to have us working on this. And I will just close my comments with this, is just again on the same note of National Infrastructure Week, historic day for the TIP, and for, of course, the double tracking and Westlake corridor to be included in that. Very long time coming. And I just want to compliment, if I can feel indulging in this, staff for mobilizing to be able to make sure this was coordinated. So you can imagine a project of this size and complexity, a lot of moving pieces, from the air quality to environmental justice to the timing of public outreach meetings, etc. And it's, I think, very gratifying for the region that agencies like NICD and NERC can work so, Joe, thank you, so closely together to be able to coordinate things like this to make really good things happen. So I just want to thank staff for helping to make sure that there were no hiccups getting to this point.
if I'll be allowed to lead the wording as well. One of the things I think is that the way that public bodies express the work that they've been tasked with from the public, I'm a public finance officer, I'm not being Abraham Maslow, who, if my own tool is a hammer, I tend to see every problem as a nail. But I honestly believe that one of the ways they express their wills is to expend public resources on their behalf to create public good. And we're doing $1.6 billion of programming to that end. And it will, in terms of economic development, but more importantly, the new concept that's important to quality of life is actually quality of place. We now know that both millennials and baby boomers agree on those kinds of concepts. And so a lot of this is going to be what we were at this morning, where the governor signed the House Enrolled Act, as well as what's going to be brought with that will be about quality of place. Millennials, interestingly enough, before they get a job, don't decide, get the job first and locate. They locate first, then they find a job. So quality of place will become an even more important aspect of making livable communities, which is a concept that's still embraced in our 2040 plan. We call it livable communities, but it's all quality of place. So I'm very proud to be chairing as that particular historic step is made, but I also recognize that there's a lot of hands that make that happen. I'm just the beneficiary of a lot of good work. So I want to commend all the work that was done to bring us to this place. And I recognize Mayor Milo, who has also worked very hard to chair the legislative committee to work with the governor and other legislators to make sure that that package would go through the way it did. So I commend you for that as well. And I need to complete your report, and I thank the commission for its forbearance with me. It's now time to take up the Finance and Personnel Committee. I do know that Karen Freeman Wilson had to absent herself. Commissioner Schaefer, would you please present?
Sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, in the absence of our recently departed Mayor Freeman Wilson.
I should have said something better.
Perhaps I could. The Finance and Personnel Committee met at 7:30 this morning. I repeat, at 7:30 this morning. So I fully expect overtime compensation for the members of the committee. Be that as it may, we discussed a number of topics, took action on a number of issues, 3 of which will be presented to the executive board this morning for your approval. Thank you. Would you like to start over? No. Thank you. The first item is consideration of budget amendments. We see that we have new sources of revenue, $14,000 coming from the Environmental Lake Michigan Coastal Grant, and that money is to be used for the Deep River Dam study. $14,000 there as amendment number 2 to the 2017 budget. Amendment number 3 is also $2,000 coming from another revenue source to be used for it came from the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission, and is to be used instead for the Communication Partner Agency. That was the recommendation of the Finance and Personnel Committee, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you want to take those amendments collectively, numbers 2 and 3, or
Are they in our packet?
yes, on page 44. I'm sorry, they're not in your packet, they're in my packet.
Okay. All right. We can receive that, in bank. So if there's no objection, the chair will be happy to have a motion to approve the amendments all as presented. It's been moved by Commissioner Tun. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Tun, seconded by Commissioner Benson to approve all the amendments as presented. You wish to speak? I'm sorry, Commissioner Noel.
Yes, she made the second.
That's correct. I'm correcting the record. Do you wish to speak in favor of your motion? Hearing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition? Hearing none, as many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
As many opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The proposed budget amendments are now adopted.
Thank you. Continuing, Mr. Chairman. The second item of the 3 is consideration of a Deep River Dam study contract between NERC and Flatland Resources, LLC. This is for the purpose of conducting and I will probably have to defer to staff to fill in some of the blanks, but in general, it's to consider make an assessment of that dam at a contractual price not to exceed $44,780. And Angie Haynes or anybody else who's on the blanks?
This is a project that we received Lake and River enhancement dollars from the state to fund, and then we have leveraged that with the federal coastal dollars so that at no cost to local government board NERC to perform the study. The dam is partially owned by the city of Lake Station and partially owned by the Garysville Corporation. So it's awkward to get the study moving with multiple owners. So we're kind of sending it to move forward. The dam is probably is a safety hazard as well as an environmental concern. And so that's why we have stepped in to sponsor the study.
And the Finance and Personnel Committee recommended adoption or approval of that contract by the Executive Board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Benson moved to approve the agreement, seconded by Commissioner Spenson. Do you wish to speak in favor of your motion? Does anybody wish to speak in opposition to the motion? Hearing none, as many as in favor say aye. Aye. Is any opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion is passed, the agreement is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the third and final item pertains to procurement recommendations from the Finance and Personnel Committee to the Executive Board. It involves a purchase of a utility vehicle for the East Chicago Transit. This is to be paid for by 80% FTA funds, with the local agency providing the 20%. And this utility vehicle is to come at a price not to exceed $28,000 in federal funds. Second procurement is acquisition of security cameras and lighting for the city of Valparaiso. Again, this is to be paid using 80% FTA funds, with the Valparaiso paying the 20%. And the project comes to us at a price not to exceed $100,000 in federal funds. The Finance and Personnel Committee recommended both of these acquisitions and procurements to the Executive Board.
Second matter, that's related to the Chicago Dash, I trust. Okay, thank you. The committee's made its recommendation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Benson moves the adoption or the approval of the recommendations. Is there a second? Second. It's been seconded by Commissioner Noel. Do you wish to speak in favor of your motion? Does anybody wish to speak in opposition? Hearing none, as many as in favor say aye. Aye. As any opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion passed. The purchases are approved.
And that concludes the report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer, very much. Commissioner Benson?
The Environmental Management Policy Committee met, and we meet the first Thursday of every month at 9 o'clock in this room, and we're all invited. We talked a lot about legislative priorities with the skinny budget that was proposed. It's a rough thing to focus on because it keeps moving. But what our intent was to peel apart the cuts and pluses and to prioritize them to recommend to the legislative committee what we thought needed the largest push from our committee, because there was others that would get noticed without our help. And so we submit that to the legislative committee as they proceed, but as I stated and as they pointed out, the budget proposal keeps changing. So, and what we're talking about is the one for fiscal year 18. But that's in your packet, and I'm not sure that there's an action that needs to be made. It's presented to you, the executive board and the legislative committee, and we'll adjust accordingly as the budget does, what we want to push on.
Commissioner Benson, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the commission? For the committee, hearing none, the report will be received and filed. We've now taken up the technical planning committee. That business has already been done, and so we're going to go to the legislative committee. Commissioner Milo.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that have gone on. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Benson, for all the work that the EMPC has done on sorting through some of the budget initiatives. I think it's great to dig into all those different categories and specific programs that, while it is a moving target with what seems to be happening out in DC, I think it's helpful to have organized ourselves and our thoughts around prioritization of some of the issues. So there's a lot of in-depth work that was done there and greatly appreciated, especially I think Kathy Luther has done a tremendous amount. So really appreciate her efforts and all of the EMPC's submission, I guess, to all of that information. We had a little bit of conversation earlier this week that because it is a little bit of a moving target out in DC, the skinny budget was submitted, as we discussed with this body a couple of meetings, and then since we've last convened, then there was a passage of a temporary spending bill at the federal level that then takes the federal government to, I believe, this fall, which Congress is intending to have a more in-depth look at various programs leading up to some of those efforts, I understand, this fall. So what we're working on right now with regard to that federal budget is in coordination with the National Association of Regional Councils, or NARC, that trying to coordinate with them on what was all included in the substantial spending bill that was passed and I think signed by President Trump earlier this month, and to then be able to see a little bit of what the sense of Congress was through this process that, as I discussed at the last meeting, there's independent of any personalities that may be involved, just the structure of the process overall of having different perspectives from an executive and a legislative branch role overall will impact the ultimate result of what the federal budget looks like. And so we're going to dig a little bit deeper into what was actually passed in the current spending bill that takes us to this fall to have a better idea of what we may be able to anticipate for what Congress may be looking to do with a longer-term spending bill. Yes, with anything in Washington, D.C., then things shift at any given time, and so we're trying to keep up with all of those things, and that's where it's so helpful to have a great partner with our friends over at the National Association of Regional Councils, that they are very supportive and helpful for keeping track of all the different actions and conversations that are happening around all these different initiatives, so it keeps us up to speed and able to react in a timely fashion to make sure that we're having the necessary conversations if there are potential threats to programs that are among priorities for us. And so we'll keep dialoguing with them, and I will certainly be happy to keep this body advised. And if there's a need to have any impromptu meetings with the legislative committee to really try and communicate some strong messages of support or opposition to initiatives that may be coming forward, then I'll keep everybody apprised of all of those developments. I'll come back to actually I guess that covers the federal side of things. From a state perspective, that the General Assembly has concluded their business for the 2017 session, and I wanted to first just touch on, I guess, the roads bill, which I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about, the execution of the Community Crossings program. But first want to express my sincere gratitude for all of the outstanding leadership that was provided by Representative Soliday in his role as chairman of the Transportation Committee, and tremendous work that he's put towards this for a number of years to then bring us to an opportunity to have a long-term transportation spending plan and overall implementation. That was a huge lift, and greatly appreciate the leadership that he provided there. And I just had my email pulled up here with the updates of some of the specifics, and my phone decided to take it away here, of some of the updates with specific numbers on where we were at. But there's a substantial opportunity now for local government through the Community Crossings program that was initiated last year and has now been continued. There are some adjustments that have been made in some of the population thresholds for being able to take advantage of the Community Crossings program, and I'm understanding that there is a pretty aggressive timeline that the INDOT is working towards in order to get all of these projects moving, so that we'll be smelling even more asphalt this summer and fall. And it creates greater opportunity for local government to have access to long-term planning capabilities and overall projects to address the need that has existed in our communities for a long time. So once again, thanks to Chairman Soliday for all of those efforts. And it was a huge team effort as well across the state from a NERC perspective and from a local government from all different communities to make sure that we were engaged throughout the process to ensure that local government was represented, and we couldn't have asked for a better champion than Representative Soliday. And we've already talked a lot about the double tracking, and it's an exciting day that we all knew was coming because we had the confidence that the vision would be realized of what this opportunity presents for our region. Beyond that and everything that's been shared, I think it was a great opportunity for our region to really have a project that everybody came together around. Not from any kind of partisan standpoint or even a home turf standpoint, but everybody seeing the value that this was going to create for our region and the opportunity to really strengthen and in some cases build and create a relationship that I anticipate will carry forward, has laid the track for us to be able to work together on many other initiatives in the future. So I think it was just a tremendous opportunity for not only the realization of the growth that's going to come from it, but also then the chance to build new relationships and strengthen those. The last piece I'll have from the state level is just to kind of update everybody here on some conversations I've had with folks from the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, IEDC, that if you'll remember that they have really tried to emphasize, just as Chairman Griffin mentioned, the role of quality of place and the importance of creating livable communities and attracting people from a talent background and understanding that we have to be able to compete for those different folks in a marketplace of communities and regions. And that was a big emphasis behind the Regional Cities Initiative that then the General Assembly championed. There is still very much that mentality that they are working towards and want to encourage. And so I think it's still yet to be seen of how that's going to manifest itself, but there is still a great interest amongst IEDC to participate in those kinds of conversations. And I think it's important to mention here to underscore what the chairman mentioned of the importance of quality of place, and it's great to have partnership from state agencies like the IEDC, and particularly from an economic development standpoint, to recognize the role that that plays in growing our state overall. It's not just about the hard policies previously of things like abatement packages and different incentives that may be put together, that having that quality of place and attracting people from a marketplace standpoint is something that is very important as we look to grow our communities and the state as a whole. So looking forward to continuing to partner with them on those kinds of initiatives that really support the 2040 vision and many of the messages and efforts that we have worked towards here. I think that's probably enough for me, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions that anybody has on things.
Commissioner Morrow, thank you for all the ways that you exhibit your leadership to the public good. I thank you for that report. If the group will forbear me a bit, Commissioner Soliday, we praise you. I tell my friends about the Community Crossings Grant. Here's a good public policy idea. We're going to get 100% rate of return for every dollar we put in, up to $1 million. Why wouldn't we do this? Thank you for using the rationale of public investment as a way to help us get new money. I can't thank you enough, and thank you for being patient and persevering to get us a long-term solution, which is really what we needed. I'd love you, if you don't mind, to make some remarks if you'd like to share about your thoughts about the legislation.
Sure, just some important things for all of you that are different in community crossings. Number one, you can match with anything, which was what I hoped for about 4 years ago. Anything you can use for match money, number one. Number two, you must have an asset management plan. Now, folks have fallen off a tree over this issue, but the truth of the matter is, we had a chief of the police in a small town go to the school and drive every street in his community so he could have an asset management plan. It's not that hard, and I've yet to have a county or a city not thank me because they've said we should have done it a long time ago. Extend the life of the road. Another piece of it, a very small community, they had $25,000 to match. What can you do with $25,000? They had never crack sealed any of their streets. They got a $25,000 match, 50 grand, and they crack sealed them all. It's a huge difference. But here's the rules that are different. If you're in a county above 50,000, it's 50-50. If it's smaller than 50,000, it's 75-25. If you're a town of less than 10,000, anywhere, no matter how big or small your county is, it's 75-25. This year, there's a little dip in the amount of money available, but we'll be at about $200 million a year. Every penny of the $15 registration fee goes to the matching grant, as does some other money. So, really important program. I don't care who you're talking to, you need to apply. You need to get your applications in. INDOT's working very hard to get them out, get them turned around. The only thing that we did wrong last year that it's not a region issue, it's a state issue. We said you got to check the day you signed the contract. Bureaucracy does not move that fast. So it may be 90 days before it's processed, but they're, again, get rid of a whole lot of red tape in the program. So, a lot of money. And there are folks who were opposed to it. But we need to use it wisely and we need to use it all. We cannot sit there and let money lay on the desk. The thing that IEDC was mentioned, do a lot of good work. But remember, the purpose of the program is first take care of what we've got, finish what we started, build for the future. IEDC came in within the first week and had enough brand new projects that would spend all the money. Can't do that. Got to take care of what we got. Got to stay on target, because it'll be very tough to go back in and get more money because we said we were data driven. So priorities are take care of what we've got first. Let's get ourselves, here's reality. The state's at about 11% poor. Locals are about 40% poor. There's enough money to bring the state down to 3% poor and locals down to 20% poor. But if we come back and we say we're still at 40% poor and we spend all this money, it's going to be a really tough sell. Really, really tough sell. So I urge you to get the projects in, take care of what you have first, do good asset management. We are the only state in the union now that has asset management at every level of government. So salute to all of you and special thanks to the Association now AIM, the Association of Mayors, the Association of Counties. We said we're gonna be data driven, we're gonna pick a number, we're gonna stick to it. The one I hope you'll bear with us, that only a few people understand, and I'm not sure I'm one, but I think I do, and that's the federal matching plan. We're not sure how much that leverage is up. It's quite possible you can get 25 to 50% more value for the federal dollar. And how we administer that, first priority is get community crossings going. The second is get a priority list. Folks, it's going to be data driven. It always was a little bit, but the law is very clear. 2 economists, 2 engineers, they have to make a model that stands up to transparency, that says, here's how we prioritize state projects based on, I think I listed 6 in the bill. They're free to add others, but it's not going to be cloud-based. Never was. Glad to show you the spreadsheet. Some of you have seen it. Ty has a copy of where state money goes. All this rhetoric that mama loves somebody else best is baloney. We can do it by lane miles. We can do it by head count. Lake County has been number 2 for a long time. LaPorte County got way up there because of some work that needed to be done up here. But it will be even more data-driven, and the value of economic contribution will have, it's not who can shout the loudest, this is for economic development. There will be a number assigned to what economic contribution there is, and should be able to be seen on the website, so forth. So hope that's what you wanted to hear.
Very much, Mr. Commissioner, thank you again. Yes, Ty?
I just wanted to riff further if I could on the asset management plan. Representative Solity's comments, he's absolutely right. This has been scary for some folks and shouldn't be. And is Justin still not leaving? No, yeah, he's still leaving. So Justin really should be a case example for this. And that should use Justin as an example in the process. Justin went to his town council to try to take advantage of this, and really single-handedly, he literally sat down at his kitchen table and created the asset management plan that was necessary to get the funding for the cross, and took the initiative to do that. And it just shows that this is available to any size community with anybody with an initiative to just go ahead and do it. So I mean, kudos. It's true, and you're model for any community that wants to take advantage of this.
We left $58 million laying on the table last year because people listened to gossip. We cannot leave that kind of money laying on the table. It will get reassigned. So get those applications in.
Thank you again, Commissioner. Thank you again, Ty. And congratulations. I love hearing stories, Commissioner, of public officials in personal industry. That's extremely heartening. We now recognize the Deputy Commissioner from the LaPorte District, Rick Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I got to join the group call with Paul. I'm going to have a lot of fun.
That's
good. With Representative Soliday. Again, I know there's a great partner. And as an elected official for infrastructure and what we do, he's forgotten what Oliver learned about what Indiana was doing and what he did to champion, to great courage to do what got done. And I think all of us need to recognize that we have, but working in this every day, I see what the representative does, and it's amazing things. Following on, one of the points I was going to cover was community crossings. We're going to meet in LaPorte coming up on May 31st. One is at 10 a.m., the other one is at 1 p.m. So if you just make sure you please contact us if you're not scheduled to attend as a local, so that there'll be very information to say what the process entails. There'll be Q&A. There's also a flyer in the lobby by the sign-in sheet that has some information about it. As I said, we were talking at staff, or in Indy, not long after the General Assembly came out of session, and we were looking at each other going, wow. The wow being, we have a lot of work to do as an agency. Because the work that the General Assembly did requires us now to do work to figure out how to get there. Some of this is our effort and our due diligence delivering this to the public is going to be contingent upon how well we do it. That said, I know I have an report of Sean McRae today. My capital program director is here, Lindsay Quist, construction director, communication director, that conveys into Indianapolis and what Indiana did last year. As I said in that meeting, I think the greatest billboard for community crossings is what happened last year. And those naysayers saw the good, the ones that didn't listen to gossip, the ones that did listen saw what happened for the ones that didn't, and good happened. And I remember coming here saying, I wish we could deliver the federal programs that quickly. It was a lot of work, but we did it. And it was a huge and great accomplishment. I think people saw that, so I'm hoping to the point that means we don't leave money on the table, because people did see the success of last year. In fact, just show of hands, I didn't know it is terrible business in the district. You may know where Onward is? Onward, the town of Onward. Onward got money for community crossings this year, because they didn't listen to gossip, and they're about this big. And that being the point, they listened, they paid attention, they submitted, probably somebody said at the kitchen table. I don't know if that's the case, but again, good job. and they got the money. It's an easy process, or let's put it this way. It's as easy as you can get. You can go online, download an application, complete the application, have an asset management plan, pretty much submit what you desire, and we go through it as an agency and respond to that, again, as quickly as we can with a check. That's pretty good for infrastructure development and maintenance. So I just wanted to echo that. Please tell everyone what's going on and attend the meetings. I think there's also a sheet for the commissioners here. There are meetings in other districts. If you're not around the meeting on the 31st, you're welcome to go to any one of the meetings. The same information will be presented throughout all the districts. So if you happen to be in another area of the state and around a top facility, please feel free to attend one of those meetings as well. I do think we want you to register, so make sure you call us. What is the number? 219-325-7564, and let us know, because I can tell you now the morning session is packed. So if you could be available in the afternoon, that would be far better, because if not, you're going to be standing in the morning. It is full. Everybody's trying to get in there at once. I think that's about it on community crossings. It's pretty much the same session as far as the cap, it's $1 million. The representative went over the changes for the local requirements. On SWAP, I will tell you, we are still working, as I just said, because this is so recent, we're working on the guidance document now, and it's not ready. I can tell you it will not affect any of the FY18 projects yet, because they're so far along in design and development that we just wouldn't see the benefit. In fact, I just got that from Lindsay via text, because I'm like, I don't know if they're going to be ready yet. And I would not. So I'll tell you this, I talked to Travis Underhill, who is our deputy commissioner in capital programs in Indy, and he is diligently working with staff to get that document in place so that we can have it for future years. So that's what I have on SWAP, and with that document will provide that guidance. So we're all kind of waiting for the same thing. It's just this is so fresh, the representative work. I mean, it's pretty much just out the door, and we have put it on the table and started to pull it apart ourselves now. So bear with us, we will have it soon. Beyond that, the I-65 widening project is scheduled to begin on 1 June, which is right around the corner. We had a groundbreaking a couple weeks ago down at the way station. It was pretty cool. It was windy day. It's not often you get to pull over a way station and have a large event like that. It was kind of interesting. A lot of people showed up, interestingly enough, coming off the interstate like that. So that's happening. Beyond that, we are in the season. You've seen the barrels. I'll give my standard public safety announcement. There's not a place in the Port District I don't think we are working on. Please be cognizant when you're driving through there. Put your phone down, put your hands on the wheel. We had someone hit. We don't like that. I mean, it's just, I can't say it enough. Like I said, I do not wish anyone ill will, but people going through those areas and not being cognizant that people are working and trying to improve our highways, and someone gets hurt, it perturbs me. And I just want us all to understand that I'm aware, and I think we're all aware, that these devices are that thing called distracted driving. And that's what we're seeing the majority of time, incidents happen on our highways in Indiana, period. And I'm convinced that that is part of it. Taking this to a scientific level, taking this to a personal level. So please be aware as you're driving through those areas to be cognizant. And of course, the other side of it is, we know you have to slow down. And we know it's an inconvenience, and we know that you want this. Please keep that in the back of your mind. You want this done. The outcome is going to be positive. When the barrels come up, we have improved infrastructure. With that, I will stop preaching. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're very welcome. Does anyone have questions for the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to mention a great website called Traffic Lines that NDOT has. I refer to whenever I go to another part of the state to avoid construction. It's a great site, it's easy to use, and they've done a marvelous job with it.
On that same site, we also have information on community crossings on the department website. And don't forget our map, the county maps that show your projects and what's the program, the amount of spend by county. They are updating that as well. So you should be seeing that information. Again, if you haven't been there, it's under, I forget now, because they redesigned our site. It's on our department site. It shows a map of Indiana, it's Lycoming County. It'll show you the projects, the amounts, the areas, the programs that are taking place within your respective county. Thank you.
Rick, in a different bill, we put in aggregation, which allows for two communities that are are doing one project to aggregate and get more money. So up here, where communities touch each other, you could have a bridge, for a simple example, that connects, take a pick, Portage to Chesterton, and you can get more money because you have two entities. In the past projects, one project got one check, now you can aggregate.
That's, I wish we had that. We're doing something jointly with Griffith, and that we would have benefited from that grant. That's good to hear.
Mine works slowly.
No, it's good. We'll come up with more stuff. We're good neighbors. We'll do that. Thanks. Yeah, I just want to say, Commissioner, oh, please.
I have actually two things.
First
First,
of all, it's a popular topic.
if you need more space in the report meeting, then let us know, and we can try to help you from a facility standpoint. That we've got some larger facilities. The second thing I have is actually a tradition that we have in the city of LaPorte that I brought forward from my days in the Navy, that one of the naval traditions that we have is recognizing people that have gone above and beyond, are awarded what's called Bravo Zulu. That just says thank you for having put the extra effort forward, and I wanted to bring that initiative forward here today and recognize an individual from INDOT, Matt Deichley, that he's standing there making what's happening right now. Matt has done a tremendous job. I had an individual that reached out to me with some questions about a project, and I put him in touch with INDOT. And Matt has gone far above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that he is responding to all of these questions that have come forward, and lengthy, thorough, thoughtful responses. So if you'll indulge me for just a second, then I wanted to present Matt Deichley.
Do my job, by the way.
It's your Bravo Zulu award from the city of LaPorte. These are the Bravo Zulu flags that.
Nice.
So thank you very much for all of your.
It's just my job, so I appreciate it, but I will continue to do the job.
You do it with such verb. Such verb. Commissioner Stinson, did you have comment?
I just had a question, I guess, with this joint project thing. What happens in case, say, we're doing a joint project with the county of Porter for a 75-25, county would be a 50-50, how do we work out that?
That will be up to the commissioner. We anticipated those kinds of things. Indianapolis, which is this, I will never understand the politics there. But my guess is that they will figure out something. They'll do your part at 75-25 and the county's at 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah, the chair is always fair.
That's what we had heard, that's last I heard as well, that they always take into consideration the population requirements.
Okay.
Project is-
And just divide it out based on the road area?
Correct.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Anything else? I don't have a Bravo Zulu. I feel that, but I have something in that spirit.
They can strive for it.
That's why I would strive for that. If I didn't have asthma, I'd serve. I would. But, I want to thank you. I just want to thank all leadership at INDOT. One of the things I hear frequently from mayors when I serve with them in formerly NIAC, now AIM, legislative committee or the executive committee, is that there have been historically a feeling that INDOT was unresponsive. And that's not the case anymore. Firstly, we have one of our ranks, Commissioner Matt, from former Mayor Franklin. We like Matt. We like Joe being there, excuse me. We like him being there a lot. But we thought LaPorte has actually done a lot for us. And I had an issue where we have a project that INDOT is supervising to replace a bridge, and we were concerned about pedestrian safety. You immediately got someone dispatched. You called me back immediately. You brought people there to talk to us, both the managing engineers of the project as well as a representative from INDOT, from Indy, things. And we got the matter resolved, even more than we anticipated to our satisfaction, because we were willing to pay a part of that. So thank you again. When I agree with the mayor, you may think it's just your job, but doing your job the way you do it is what we're celebrating, and I think that's no small thing. So thank you for seeing it as servant leadership and not just merely a job. That was evidence of your humility.
And thank you for setting the tone that lets that be the case. I know you served as a Marine, I can tell because your gig line is always perfectly straight even as a civilian. But I don't want to diminish the service you're doing now. This public service is also very valuable. We appreciate that, and we look forward to the good work you're going to continue to do. So thank you, Commissioner. We're now at the place in the agenda for other business, I beg your pardon. Commissioner,
You read off the agenda, the approval of the minutes of April 20th for the executive board. That was a full commission, not just an executive board.
thank you. The record will reflect that. And I don't believe the movers had, their intent was still realized to satisfy the motion. Thank you for that. Anything further? We're now at the moment for public comment. Consistent with our public comment participation policy, it requires people to sign up. We have had a signatory, Mr. Nowacki of Gary, Indiana, wishes to speak. Although the agenda item topic is in there, item, we don't have really item on the topic, but that will not be a barrier to letting you speak. Welcome, Mr. Nowacki.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Members of the commission, my name is Jim Nowacki. I live on Broadway in Gary, Indiana. I know there's a big project coming up on Route 53 Broadway. I did want to start by saying in the past I had a lot of complaints about the project, the 1220 project, including the complete streets aspect of it and the shortcomings in regards to that on that project. I also complained a great deal about the flooding on Fifth Avenue, and I have to say that some of that problem has been addressed. I think Mr. Powers talked about that. He sent the Badger trucks out there with state crews, and they had done a good job on some of the locations. There are still some of the locations that that there's been no mitigation of the flooding. As I talked to some of the technicians who were working on the project, they said that they had sent down the little camera and they had seen that some of the lateral lines owned by the city of Gary and Gary Sanitary District were collapsed, and there was just nothing that the state was going to do that. The Gary Sanitary District insists that it's a problem of the state. So while the state says it's Sanitary District says it's the state, still leaves the flooding and the damage to the very expensive reconstruction of that 1220 corridor. I did want to mention that while I live on Broadway and I'm going to be watching closely the rebuilding of the Route 53, there is no portion of that project that includes complete streets. In other words, they're going to do the roadway, they're going to put in some lighting, but there's no complete street aspect of that project. And while I hear us clapping about complete streets, and Mr. Griffin, I hear you saying in your community there were some pedestrian issues, they took care of it right away. Apparently they're not taking care of the pedestrian issues regarding the complete streets on this now large, very expensive Route 53 rebuilding. And quite frankly, it's frustrating. I have to sit, everyone's clapping about $1.6 billion, everyone's going to get a piece of it. And while 53 is our major, it's our major commercial thoroughfare, and it's almost completely, it's got all the retail, it's a combination of retail, it's a little bit of residential, but the sidewalks are in such poor condition, and I walk that route at least every week on my way to Crown Point. And some places you have to go way out of your way to avoid the collapsed sidewalks. And it's so frustrating when we talk about environmental justice and we talk about having these surveys and all the rest of that. But when the tire really hits the road on these projects, it's easy simply to ignore it. We want the trucks rushing down the street, and we talk about the TIF districts, or not the TIF districts, the transportation-oriented development. Broadway is transportation-oriented development, but try to get someone to talk about the sidewalks on Broadway. They act like you're just spitting in the wind. So there was no applaud for me for the $1.6 million. Mr. Soliday gets no accolades from me. When you leave the truckers who are big contributors, taken care of, but the pedestrians and the residents of Gary who count on the sidewalks along an expensive project are just left hanging in the breeze. So I'll be complaining about that for the next 2 years.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I need to respond to this, because we've been working on this high water issue for each year for some time. I'm going to applaud, but I would say this, that sometimes I guess it's a point of perception when you think people are doing this, we're actually doing this. I mean, we agree and we're working in collaboration with the city of Gary and the sanitary district, so I wanted to bring that point as a point of clarity. That being said, we actually work with Andrew Carey, with the Gary Sanitary District. And for those of you, I'm not going to go into the science of this, but you probably all remember, some of us that are older remember the thing called compliant sewers. And CSO and what that means, and there's now consent decrees and local communities trying to work through a lot of these things that were in our past when we didn't separate sanitary from storm. Quite frankly, that's one of the conditions we have run into here. Meaning we have storm systems and manifold with P-traps. And P-trap is basically a drop that keeps sewer gases from coming back into your home or a manhole and exploding, which was common way back when. Again, for those of us old enough, remember some of those. So those fell with sediment and different things, and construction took place, and we made a connection with a local community onto a sewer line, right? It could be a sanitary sewer line or a combined sewer line. That was the case in this instance where we found those locations. And we are working with Gary Sanitary District to try to work the resolution. In fact, even going through as far as trying to get to it this fall, and to see beyond the point of, I don't believe they are glass, I believe they are antiquated local sanitary or combined sewers. And we are going to work toward a solution with the Gary Sanitary District, not in opposition to. This is a point where there has to be a handoff, and we do eventually say there is a line where a local community has a responsibility to the management of their water. We also understand we create a capacity issue by what we have with impervious surface in that project. So, to answer your question, we are working through the issue. We are not pointing fingers at them. We are trying to solve the problem, and we will solve the problem. Yep. Actually, I was hoping the mayor was still here, but she isn't, to see basically what she had to say about it. That is the response to your point on that issue and what took place there and why the water is safe. So I hope that helps your understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. The only thing I wanted to add about the 1.6 billion, almost 1.7, it's not clear everybody will get something from that that's a participant community. I haven't looked at the list clearly, but I've always said that NERC to me was a triumph of aspiration over structure. With 53 individual officials who represent specific constituencies that are by themselves broken. I mean, in some respects, to stay elected, I have to represent the Highland, what I did for them lately. And I'm lucky that they have consistently supported leadership that told the citizens, my boss, that it's also in Highland's interest to be a good neighbor. So if the report gets paving, that's good for Highland because we're members of a larger region than just the community that goes to that 7 square mile community. And that's what NERC is amazing to me. We do regional things and with 53 different disparate interests, and yet we put that aside to support, and that $1.7 billion really represents that triumph, which is no small thing. So, and I hope that you can get connected to somebody, both at NDOT but at the city, because I sympathize with you about sidewalks. I will say, if their experience was like mine, and I know that borders a state highway, we feel like we can't keep up with the sidewalk repair in our community, but this new funding bill, we think we're going to have a chance now. We've actually not only have an asset management plan, because we were in a lawsuit that became the case law with regard to sidewalk liability. So we've actually had a sidewalk assessment plan in place for a long time. We literally block them and we rank them for places of need, and we split that cost with our residents a lot. We believe we'll be able to be more aggressive about that because we have a lot of fiscal limitation. And I wish it was, that's a problem, let's address it. Very often, there's two problems and they have to compete in terms of their severity for limited resources. That's a linear programming and a goal programming problem in the science of management design. But that's really, and that may be what the city historically faced, and the state to some extent as well. And the hope is that these new resources will allow us to address places that we know have been in need of being remediated
but we haven't had resources to. So I hope you'll keep an open mind. But I also believe Diogenes advanced civilization, so you continue to be Diogenes where you need to be, Mr. Nowacki, to make sure that we're doing our jobs. Having said that, there's no further business to come before the commission. There is an announcement, thank you.
I have a Bob Barney announcement. That is the Hub of Awesome.
You are the Hub of Awesome.
We'll be hosting the Maple City Grand Prix, which is a group of F1 powerboats on Stone Lake, and this will be Friday, June 9th through Sunday, June 11th. We won't have racing on Friday this year, but we will have the downtown boat parade, which gives everybody an opportunity to see all the boats, and then the kids can go and interact with the drivers and see all these different boats at a block party that we have that evening. And then Saturday and Sunday are full of racing on Stone Lake, and it's a really cool experience because you have one of the neat things about Stone Lake is the ability to have access to it right there at the shoreline. And so you see these boats coming around the corner. They're first very close and they're going at a rapid rate of speed. What's neat to see is their ability to turn on a dime. And so it's just a great weekend of racing, and it's all free. So we'd love to welcome everybody to come to the Maple City Grand Prix June 9th through the 11th.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Commissioner Carnahan and Commissioner Shakes.
Tomorrow in the town of Schererville at 9 a.m., we have what's called 16 plus, and that's the 19 municipalities in Lake County. We've requested all of our Lake County representatives. I've contacted State Senator Niemeyer and Representative Reardon and Representative Slager, and Michael Griffin was going to try to get some others. Anybody's welcome.
I haven't heard back.
Okay, everybody's welcome to come to the town of Schererville tomorrow at 9 o'clock. They're going to talk about what took place in the legislation this year. So we're all invited at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the first week of June, a number of us will be traveling to California to participate in the annual conference of the National Association of Regional Councils. And of great importance to NERC is that our own Commissioner Jeff Benson will be standing for election as the national president of NERC. President-elect? Yeah. It's, you know, I'll still vote for him. But also important is that our own Larry Milo sits on the board of directors of that organization, and Ty Warner sits on the board of the Executive Directors Council. And when we travel to these conferences, we're not just participants, we're really exercising leadership roles in that organization. It's something that NERC should be proud of, I think.
And we recognize you, Commissioner, as a past chairman.
Thank you.
I like to say NARC, I don't know why.
Sure.
Some interesting across that you all developed. Is there any further announcements or good of the order to come before us? Having exhausted the agenda, I declare the meeting adjourned.